The land explored by our ancestors extends from Altai to the White Sea. The scientific expedition Trails of Nomads continues to unveil the path of our forefathers. A group of scientists, led by pilgrim of the 21st century Saka, has already visited more than 50 countries. Scientists reveal the exciting secrets of the past. Watch an amazing story of a great journey in the Trails of Nomads program. What documents confirm that the first states were formed by the Sakas? What signs indicate that the silver chalice with 26 written characters found near the Golden Man is an alphabetical inscription? What monument confirms that the Saka tribes were the first to use dome technology in the construction of buildings? Who were we yesterday? Who are we today? And who will we be tomorrow? Every reasonable person is concerned about these questions. In search of an answer to them, Saka travels around the world and studies history. Analyzing the results of his work and the conclusions of other Kazakhstan scientists, we understand that this is a very important and reasonable activity. They found out that our ancestors developed not only their own civilization, but also the civilization of all mankind.
Сақтардың заманында түсті металдарды өңдеу.
In the Saka period, such activities as metal processing, making various products and ornaments from it, decorating clothes, making horse harnesses, weapons and tools were at a very high professional level.
Жоғары дәрежеде болды.
Our ancestors were always courageous and resilient wherever they went. This already says a lot. This is a great power. Sometimes military dexterity cannot even be compared with it. This is a power that drives the development of civilization. For the first time on Earth, our ancestors tamed a horse, began to use pants, high-heeled boots, saddles with stirrups, and hung various types of weapons on their belts. These are all signs of progress. Now scientists talk a lot about the origins of the Kazakh statehood. It turns out that it has its roots in deep antiquity. Our ancestors lived in golden palaces, sat on golden thrones, dressed in golden clothes, and not only alive. Even the dead were buried in golden clothing. The horses they rode were also in gold harness. For the whole world history, it is like a legend. In fact, it is the history of our state. The history of Kazakh statehood perhaps goes back very deeply, but now its beginning is associated with the Saka period. This is approximately the first millennium BC. During that time, the great steppe peoples witnessed fundamental changes in their everyday life. This, first of all, was associated with mastering the iron processing. Property inequality and social division also appeared in society, which led the need to regulate these new relations. The state headed by the king became such a regulator. The heritage from the mounds of Birel, Issyk, Shilikti and Taldi implies a huge work behind this culture. First, to find gold, you need to be engaged in mining. Then gold ore must be mined. The metal should be brought, melted, poured, processed, and finally become a product. This is a huge work, a long process, and no one will do all this on horseback, swinging a saber to the right and left. Speaking about the gold production in the era of the Saka tribes, we must first of all say about the Golden Man. He became a sensation in the world science. He was found in 1969 in the Issyk mound near Almaty. All his clothes were trimmed with gold. This testifies to the fact that the Saka craftsmen possessed advanced gold processing technologies. The animal style used in the manufacture of jewelry is about the high level of development of the Saka society and a wide worldview. It is clear that the man in gold clothing had a certain status. Not everyone will be entitled to such privileges. Hence, it can be assumed that this is not just a warrior, but a king, the ruler of the state. This assumption was made by Bekmukhanbet Nurmagomedov, now a deceased scientist. He was the first to discover this priceless wealth.
Біздің елтаңбамыздағы қанатты мүйізді
Two-winged argamax with horns in our national emblem were taken not from the pointed cap of the gold man, but from his pointed crown. That is, the king's headdress is not a hat, not a malachi, not a cap, but a crown. This means that our state emblem inherited the symbolism from the crown of the golden man and suggests that already in ancient times there were not tribal unions, but a state association on the territory of the Great Steppe.
одақ емес, мемлекеттік бірлестік дегенді келет өзінен өзі.
A silver chalice also testifies to the complex structure of the Saka society. This artifact found near the Golden Man has signs. Their total number is 26, scientists say, but it is not yet known exactly what is written there and in what language. Each scientist interprets these letters in his own way. In any case, there is only one conclusion. Already 2,500 years ago, a written culture existed on Qazaq land. This monument is the oldest of all written monuments previously found on the territory of Central Asia.
Біздің бірінші жазуымыз, мына бірінші мыңжылдықтың.
Our first written language appeared in the middle of the first millennium BC in the Saka society. At that time, many people of Europe did not have a written language. That is, the previously established opinion that writing is characteristic only of a sedentary society is incorrect. The emergence of writing did not depend on the economic culture and on the economy as a whole. The inscription on the silver chalice has been read to this day in 28 versions in 6 different languages. Among them, there is a variant of the famous scientist Turkologist Altai Amanjalov. My brother, this is your hearth. Lie down. Son of the people, get down on your knees. May your people have plenty of food. That was the meaning from his point of view, but not all scholars have accepted this version of the translation. They had many questions regarding the Asic inscription. For example, how to read, from right to left, top to bottom, or vice versa. All this is not yet known for sure. A specialist in the ancient Iranian language read in Iranian. An expert in the Aramaic language read in Aramaic. An expert in the ancient Turkic language read in ancient Turkic. But all of them agreed on one common idea. There was a written language and, moreover, a very developed alphabetical writing. Such an artifact with written signs was found not only in Asic but also in the Sumerian culture. The research and lexical comparisons of the Turkic and Sumerian languages by the famous scientist Olja Süleymanov deserve special attention. As a result of his work, he concluded that these languages have been in close interaction and integration for a long time. It is no coincidence that Olja Süleymanov became one of the first scientists who read the inscription on the silver chalice found near the Golden Man, and named it as the Asic inscription. Now I believe that in the 3rd millennium BC, all Turks, including the Kipchaks, Oguzes, and Karluks, lived in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is Sumer. They were conquered by the ancient nomadic Semites. The Semites came from the Arabian Peninsula, from its southern part. The ancient Semites, through the propaganda of Sumerian culture, would later form the basis of Babylon and Assyria. The multinational population of Mesopotamia, that is, the former Sumerians, began to move away from the ancient Semites. Those who worshipped the sun moved towards the east in search of the sun's nest. These are the Chinese, Mayan tribes, Aztecs, and others. The Turkic Kipchaks, Sumerians, and ancient Semites bowed not to the sun, but to the star Venus. Therefore they moved to the west, that is, in the direction where the star Venus rises. The Qazaqs still have veneration for Venus and the moon. Later we began to say Ayman Sholpan, translated from Kazakh as my moon and Venus.
Ayman Sholpan и так далее.
It is very important to pay attention to the research of the famous scientist Koishiguro Salgaroli. In his opinion, the first man came from Eastern Europe, then he settled all over the earth. One of the branches settled in Asia, namely on the territory of the Great Steppe. According to the place of their settlement, they were divided into Oguzes, who occupied the territory near rivers and lakes, and into forestmen, who settled near the forests. Between them, a huge space was occupied by the steppe inhabitants. Later, they were called the Kipchaks. The father of history, Herodotus, said, "All our gods are not Greek. All except Dionysus are the gods of the African wild people." Who are these African savages? What language did they speak? There is no information about this. To investigate this issue, the mythologists of the world have united and published many volumes of works entitled The Mythology of the World. A special dictionary was also compiled. If you take this dictionary, it says that, for example, how the Greek god is called in Greek and how he is called in the language of the African savages. In fact, if you look at it, the names sound similarly in the Kazakh language. Therefore, there is an assumption that the first inhabitants of Africa were the Turks. According to the research by Koishiguro Salgaroli, representatives of the Us tribe were the first to come to the territory of the Great Steppe, and the name Asia also comes from the name of this tribe. These are the components of the tribe name As and the word Iya, that is, As Iya, or Asia, in such a new concept. The word in translation means roof or place of residence. The Russian scientist researcher Yuri Drozdov and the Latvian scientist Galina Shuken confirmed the fact that language of the settlers was Turkic. According to their information, the first language of all mankind was the Proto-Turkic language. And it is no coincidence that in the Middle Ages, the Kipchak language was the language of international relations. We have various manuscripts. For example, in a work written in 1312 in Cairo, a scientist named Ibn Hayyan says that the Turkic language is divided into two parts and that most of the Kipchak language is the main language for the Turkic language. Therefore, we wanted a dictionary based on the Kipchak dialect. The second part is the Turkmen language used by the Oguz. While there was no special need, the scientist says Turkmen words were not very popular. This means that all the Turkic peoples in the Middle Ages, in the period of Islam until the 10th, 13th, and 15th centuries, despite their native language, nationality, and country, used Kipchak as an international language. Participants of the scientific expedition Trails of Nomads found historical documents confirming that the Kipchak language was used as an international language. A group of scientists led by Sapar Iskak visited the archives of Armenia, Ukraine, Venus, and found manuscripts in the Kipchak language there. For example, in the largest world center, the Armenian National Archive Matanadaran, the Kip's ancient manuscripts, there are curious written materials, the Armenian Kipchak Dictionary, the grammar of the Kipchak language, and other interesting books. The book stored in Venus in the Marciana National Library occupies a special place in world history. The work, written in the 13th century, contains translations of Kipchak words in Latin and Persian. If you look at the manuscripts, you will notice that the ancient Kipchak language and the modern Kazakh language are very similar.
Қазақ терминінің өзі Қыпшақтардан шыққан.
The term Qazaq comes from the Kipchaks. There are certain phonetic laws. Synharmonic law. The most complete law of synharmonicity is in the Kipchak language. For example, if we take the word Qazaq, Why does it come from the Kipchaks? Because the word Qazaq has complete synharmonism. There are 2 A letters and 2 K letters. For example, the Uzbeks would pronounce the word Qazaq as Qazaq. This is also a harmony but not complete. True classical, full synharmonism is present in the Kipchak language.
Толық сингармонизм бұл қыпшақ тілде.
Kazakhstan is located in the very center of the continent. It is a kind of corridor connecting east and west, north and south. As is known, a lot of migration processes took place on this land. Despite this, the main population did not move from their historical sites, therefore the researchers believe that modern Kazakhs are the descendants of the ancient Sakas and Turkic Kipchaks. The surviving material culture is the main proof of historical continuity. If we compare the artifacts found in the Birel and Pazyryk mounds with Kazakh patterns, Alashan Sirmak carpets, it is as if they were made by one master. Although there is a 1,000-year history between them, historical continuity is visible even in these material values. Historical continuity has existed since ancient times, from the Saka period and even earlier. This is evidenced by the find made in eastern Kazakhstan region, the headdress of Ujar princess. It is very similar to the Kazakh saukele, and the samruk bird depicted on it is a bird from Kazakh mythology. There are many such examples. When I was a child, I met a lot of wise elders around. They knew the genealogy by heart, and sitting at the Dastar Khan, drinking tea or kumez, they could talk for a long time, from Adam to the present times. There was one old man named Ayman. He began like this: Sondai Sakata Zamaninda, which means, in ancient times, during the period of our Saka great-grandfathers. That is, we also considered the Saka as our grandfathers, and our grandfathers also said so. What place do our ancestors, the Saka, occupy in the global human civilization? They are the first city builders. This is confirmed by the ancient city of Shirik Rabat, located on the highest hill on the coast of Jana Darya, a dry tributary of the Sirdarya. The foundations of this city were laid in the 4th, 2nd centuries BC, and until the 10th, 13th centuries AD, it was a prosperous city. This is confirmed by artifacts found during excavations at the site of the city and in the burials of the nobility. Residential buildings of those times are not inferior to modern ones. They have several rooms. Therefore, it is worth paying attention to the materials provided by the Turkic scholar Karjaubay Sartkoja. There is a corridor for entering China. It is called Qi. There is Lianzhou and Xi'an district. At that time, the Xi'an area was part of the Saka state. Chinese scientists speak about this. In this corridor, the first cities were built by the Saka. The Saka united the Chinese, and the Saka tribes were the first to form a state too. Recently, Chinese scientists have been making many interesting discoveries. The Saka raised the construction to an artistic level. This is evidenced by the unparalleled mausoleum Balande. It dates back to 4th, 2nd centuries BC. It differs in a special architecture. This is a domed structure. Its structure was advanced for that time. In the 4th century BC, the Saka mastered the technology of domed construction of buildings. In Rome, dome structures began to be built in the 1st century AD. This means that our ancestors mastered the dome technology of construction 400 years earlier than the Romans. This is the steppe civilization, the civilization of the Saka. We must know and appreciate this. And then the answer to the question of who we will be in the future will appear by itself. A state that exalts and remembers history has a great future. History itself shows this.
Грецияда Токсарис, Анахарсис деген екі ғалым болды.
There were 2 scientists in Greece named Toxaris and Anacharsis. They were both Scythians. Anaxagoras was a very highly educated philosopher. Toxaris was a very competent doctor, and this also suggests that there were a lot of world-class scientists among the Saka and Scythians.
үлкен дүниежүзілік дәрежеде ғалымдар болды.
From Altai to the White Sea, our ancestors lived in a vast land in the vastness of the steppe. Saka, Huns, Oisons lived and flourished, and later, such states as the Turkic Khaganate, Dashti Kipchak appeared in this land. What other contribution did our ancestors make to the development of world civilization? We will tell you more about this in the next program.